Welcome to the PI Show, viewers. My name's Tony Carbone. I'm a personal injury lawyer. Next to me, I've got John Carance, another personal injury lawyer of many years' experience. How are you, John?
Evening, Tony. Evening, viewers. How are we?
And tonight, we're very lucky to have Dr. Charles Castle, a very eminent doctor who's been around for many, many years. Dr. Castle is a specialist in occupational medicine and works at the Workers Occupational Health Centre in Victoria Street, Carlton South. Good evening, Doctor. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
Welcome aboard.
I'm delighted to be here.
Thanks, Doctor. Thanks.
But before we get into that, Tony, what's in the news?
John, what's in the news is Sunday, 6th of March, we've got the story of Mark Haywood, who was driving along the Monash freeway with his semi-trailer, going to a job when at the Warrigal Road overpass, some culprits threw a block of wood about this big, say a metre long and about that wide, straight through his windscreen. Struck him in the head, fractured skull, head injuries, psychiatric injuries, shoulder damage, and somehow, miraculously, he managed to, instead of cutting across the other side of traffic onto the other side of the road, where it would have been absolutely horrific, he managed to cut across traffic to the left, and when he came to, he brought it to a stop. As I said, miraculously, no one was injured apart from himself.
And Tony, I understand you've got a personal involvement in this matter?
Yeah, I have. I've got my involvement in this is that I'm acting for him, but the key to it is that I want to get some action by VicRoads and the appropriate authorities to make sure that they start barricading those overpasses, especially the walkways, because the ones where you've got roads and cars moving up and down, you generally don't have a problem because people are scared to do the wrong thing because someone's going to see them. But in all these instances, including Mark and the incident with the Bluestone doctor, they were overpasses where there was no traffic. So the people got away with it, they weren't caught.
And
but,
there was a recent incident in this regard.
Just a couple of weeks ago, we had the situation where a bus driver was driving along the Monash again, Doc, and someone threw a rock and hit his windscreen. He was lucky not to get injured, and you know, obviously, other people getting injured in the process. But the real problem is that eventually, it's going to be, in my eyes, it's going to be Victoria's worst accident waiting to happen if we're not careful.
It sounds like it, yes.
So I think it's important that something's done about it, and the quicker the better.
I would agree.
They should prioritise their money and spend it on saving lives as opposed to just saving us some time on the road. Anyway, we'll get on to the topic of tonight, which is chronic pain, viewers. It's something that probably affects everyone in our... At some point in your life, chronic pain is going to kick in. And the expert with us tonight is Dr. Charles Castle. Doctor, what's your role in dealing with these sorts of cases?
Well, I'm a specialist in occupational medicine, and I treat patients who are injured at work or where their health affects their work. Now, a consequence of that is that a lot of these patients have pain, and their pain continues for a long period of time after their initial injury. And my role is to treat them, to try and get them back to work, and to do the best I can for them.
And John, chronic pain, what is it, psych or physical?
Well, you know my views, Tony. We've got a bit of a disagreement, but I think it's actually there is a psychological aspect, but also there is a physical aspect. And I am of the firm opinion that the physical is actually more important than the psychological aspect in regards to chronic pain.
John, we'll do a case on that point in due course,
Yes.
but I think the Court of Appeal, Chief Justice Maxwell said that chronic pain is psych. So
that was in the matter of Stambolakis, yes. However, in the further case of Jay Talaki,
look, John, I'll bring you back to that. I don't want to get into a heated debate on that at this stage.
It's a legal point that we've got a disagreement on. But doctor, yourself, the definition of chronic pain, what are we talking about?
Well, chronic pain is pain that persists beyond the normal healing process for a particular injury. So if somebody has, for example, a broken arm, and you could normally expect that fracture to heal in a matter of about 6 or 8 weeks, and once that pain continues more than about 3 months, we call it chronic pain.
And Doc, with this chronic pain, what is it, physical or psychological?
Well, that's a very complex question about which there is a lot of argument, but it is both. But in 2011, we have now clearly shown that there is a substantial physical component to chronic pain. All patients with chronic pain have a psychological component, but there is a deep underlying physical component to their injury and to their persisting pain.
Doc, doesn't it highlight the point that the body is a very complex...
It does indeed. The body is very, very complex. And the other point is that research is going on all the time. And the most recent evidence shows, which has happened over the last few years, has shown an enormous amount of improvement in our knowledge of persistent pain.
Doc, I struck my hip not long ago and pain just keeps coming and going over 2 years. Is that chronic?
That would be chronic pain, yes, certainly.
With no psychological factors here.
Well,
You've struck... It's a physical injury, Tony.
Yeah, no, I struck my hip
yourself.
and they told me there's nothing physically broken there, but
it's an actual physical injury.
It's an actual physical injury, and the pain continues, and the pain has continued for more than 3 months, so by definition it is chronic pain. I personally prefer to use the terminology persistent pain.
Okay.
And doctor, the term myofascial pain syndrome, what are we talking about there?
That's a particular type of pain associated with myofascial tissues. Myofascial tissues are muscle tendons and the muscle tendon intersection. And there are a lot of patients who have persistent pain in those particular areas, and that can usually be identified by looking for what are called trigger points, where there are musculotendinous intersections.
Doc, what's the body made up of? We've got bones, obviously. Just give us
the body's a very complex organ. It's made up from the outside of skin. Underneath skin, you've got fat. Underneath that, you've got muscle. Underneath that, you've got bones. The muscles are attached to bones. There are tendons attached to the muscles, which attach the muscles to bones. And then you've got all the internal organs like your heart, your lungs, your stomach, and your brain and the nervous system.
And it's very complex and it's very hard to diagnose because at the end of the day, if it doesn't show up on one of the scans or x-rays, it could be anything.
That's right.
You can identify the site of the pain, but you can't identify specifically what the problem is.
That's right. And the other thing which is vitally important is that there's very poor correlation between imaging studies such as MRI scans and the degree of pain that a patient is suffering.
So does that mean that the scan might not pick up a problem, but the person's in their own mind, or let's say their own body, has got a lot of problems?
Definitely.
Okay.
Tony, we need to go to a sponsors break. Viewers, we'll be back shortly.